An elderly dog barking at a neighbor's door. Most people would ignore it, annoyed by the noise. But when firefighters finally broke down that door, what they discovered left everyone speechless. This isn't just another rescue story. This is about a 13-year-old golden retriever named Max who refused to give up even when his own body was failing him. What happened in that house during those 14 hours of darkness will break your heart and restore your faith in the unbreakable bond between humans and their loyal companions. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below telling us about a time when an animal showed incredible loyalty. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us what really matters in life. Now, let's discover what Max was desperately trying to tell the world. Mrs. Eleanor Chin had lived on Maple Street for 42 years, long enough to know every crack in the sidewalk and every neighbor's routine. At 78, she moved slower than she once did, her knees protesting with each step, but her mind remained sharp as ever. Her companion through the lonely years since her husband's passing was Max, a 13-year-old golden retriever whose muzzle had turned silver with age, whose eyes had grown cloudy, but whose heart remained as loyal as the day she brought him home as a puppy. The neighborhood knew them well. Every morning at 7, Eleanor would shuffle down her front steps, Max moving carefully beside her, his arthritic legs taking the stairs one at a time. They'd make their slow circuit around the block, stopping frequently for Max to catch his breath or for Eleanor to chat with other early risers. In the evenings, neighbors would see them on the porch, Eleanor in her wicker chair, Max sprawled at her feet, both watching the world go by with the contentment of those who'd earned their rest. But on this particular Tuesday morning in late October, something was different. Tom Rodriguez, Eleanor's next-door neighbor, was the first to notice. He'd just stepped out to grab his newspaper when he heard it, a sound that made him pause mid-reach. Barking. Urgent, relentless barking. Not the casual alert of a dog spotting a squirrel or the territorial warning at a passing stranger. This was different. Desperate. Frantic. Tom frowned, glancing toward Eleanor's house. Everything looked normal. The porch light was off, the curtains drawn, the same as every morning. Yet Max's barking continued, echoing to a quiet suburban street with an intensity that sent a chill down Tom's spine. He walked to the property line, newspaper forgotten in his hand. "Max, that's you, boy." The barking intensified, and Tom's frown deepened. In all the years he'd lived next to Eleanor, he'd never heard Max bark like this. The old dog was gentle, quiet, the kind of animal that preferred a pat on the head to causing any fuss. Tom checked his watch. 7:15. Eleanor should have been out by now. Their morning routine was as predictable as sunrise. He scanned her house again, looking for any sign of movement, any indication that everything was fine. Nothing. Just that incessant barking, growing more frantic by the second. Probably nothing, Tom muttered to himself, though his gut told him otherwise. He retreated to his own house, but the barking followed him inside, penetrating the walls, refusing to be ignored. His wife, Maria, looked up from her coffee. "What's going on out there?" "It's Max, Eleanor's dog. He won't stop barking." Maria tilted her head, listening. Even through the walls, the desperation in those barks was unmistakable. "That's not normal. Have you seen Eleanor this morning?" Tom shook his head, suddenly feeling foolish for not checking sooner. "I'm going to knock on her door." "Take your phone," Maria called after him, her voice carrying a note of concern that matched his own growing unease. Tom crossed the yard quickly, his sneakers leaving dark prints in the dew-soaked grass. As he approached Eleanor's front door, Max's barking reached a fever pitch. The sound was coming from somewhere around back. Tom followed it, his heart beginning to pound in rhythm with his quickening steps. He found Max at the back door, his gray muzzle pressed against the glass, paws scratching frantically at the frame. The old dog's entire body trembled with effort, his bark hoarse from what must have been hours of trying to raise an alarm. When Max saw Tom, his barking changed, became more insistent, almost pleading. His cloudy eyes locked onto Tom's face, and in that moment, Tom understood with crystal clarity that something was terribly wrong. "Eleanor?" Tom called out, knocking firmly on the back door. "Eleanor, it's Tom. Are you okay?" Silence from within. Only Max's continued barking, his paws now scrabbling harder against the door. Tom cupped his hands against the glass, trying to peer inside. The kitchen looked undisturbed. A mug sat on the counter. The morning newspaper lay on the table, still folded. But no Eleanor. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. Was he overreacting? Eleanor was a private person. She wouldn't appreciate him calling emergency services if she'd simply overslept or decided to stay in bed. But Max's behavior was so out of character, so desperate. Tom knocked again, harder this time. Eleanor, if you can hear me, please answer. Nothing. Max let out a long, mournful howl that raised the hair on Tom's arms. The sound was ancient, primal, the cry of a creature that has stood watch over humanity since the dawn of domestication. It was a sound that spoke of loyalty beyond words, a devotion that transcended the barrier between species. It was a sound that said, "Something is wrong and I cannot fix it alone." Tom made his decision. He dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at 1247 Maple Street. My elderly neighbor, Eleanor Chun, isn't answering her door, and her dog has been barking frantically for what sounds like hours. I think something might be wrong. Is there any visible sign of distress or danger? Tom looked at Max, whose eyes never left his, whose barking had become a constant, urgent rhythm. The dog. He's trying to tell us something. I know that sounds crazy, but I've known this dog for years. This isn't normal behavior. Something is wrong in that house. There was a pause on the line. Sir, I'm dispatching officers to your location. Please stay on the line, and don't attempt to enter the residence. Hurry, Tom said, his voice tight. Please hurry. He stayed by the door, Max pressing against his legs now, still barking but with less intensity, as if the dog understood that help was coming. Tom reached down and rested a hand on Max's head, feeling the tremors running through the old dog's body. Good boy, Max. You did good. Help is coming. In the distance, sirens began to wail, growing closer. Other neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Tom saw Maria hurrying across the lawn, concern etched on her face. Behind her, old Mr. Patterson from across the street, and the young couple from 2 doors down. But Max didn't acknowledge any of them. His eyes remained fixed on the back door, on the home where his beloved companion lay somewhere inside, and his barking continued, unwavering, a testament to a loyalty that would not be silenced until his duty was done. The sirens grew louder, splitting the quiet morning air of Maple Street. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb, followed closely by a fire department SUV. Officer Sarah Mitchell was first out of the vehicle, her hand instinctively resting on her radio as she assessed the situation. Behind her, her partner, Officer James Park, emerged from the passenger side, already scanning the property with trained eyes. Tom rushed to meet them, Max limping behind him, the old dog's barking now reduced to anxious whines and intermittent barks. The dog's exhaustion was evident, his legs trembled, his breathing labored, but he refused to abandon his post. I'm Tom Rodriguez. I made the call, Tom said quickly, words tumbling out. My neighbor, Eleanor Chun, 78 years old, lives alone with her dog. She should have been out for her morning walk by now. She never misses it. Never. And Max here, he gestured a golden retriever, has been barking nonstop. I've never heard him like this. Officer Mitchell crouched down, extending her hand toward Max. The old dog sniffed briefly, then immediately returned his attention to the house, letting out another urgent bark. Mitchell's expression shifted, her years of experience reading the situation in ways that transcended words. How long has the dog been barking? She asked, standing. I'm not sure exactly. I heard him around 7:15, but he sounded hoarse even then. Could have been going since dawn, maybe earlier. 2 firefighters approached, Captain Rodriguez, no relation Tom, and firefighter Jake Morrison. The captain was a 30-year veteran whose weathered face had seen every kind of emergency imaginable. Morrison was younger, barely 30, but already known for his quick thinking under pressure. What do we got? Captain Rodriguez asked, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who'd learned to keep his head when others lost theirs. Officer Mitchell briefed him quickly. Elderly resident, no response, concerned neighbor, and one very persistent dog. We've knocked, called out, no answer. Curtains are drawn, can't see much from outside. Max barked again, this time running a few steps toward the back of the house before returning to group, his message clear. Follow me. Smart dog, Morrison observed. He's trying to show us something. Captain Rodriguez nodded. Let's do a perimeter check first. Mitchell, Park, come with us. Sir, he addressed Tom, I need you to stay here with the other neighbors. Keep them back. The group moved around the house, Max leading the way despite his obvious exhaustion and pain. His arthritic legs struggled with each step, but determination overrode discomfort. They checked windows, all locked. The front door, deadbolt from inside. When they reached the back door where Tom had first found Max, the captain peered through the glass, his flashlight cutting through the dim interior. Kitchen looks clear. No signs of forced entry. No visible distress. He tried the handle. Locked. Mrs. Chun, this is the fire department. If you can hear us, please respond. Silence. Max whined, pawing at the door again, his nails clicking against the glass with desperate urgency. Officer Park pulled out his phone, running a quick check. Eleanor Chun, 78, widowed. No criminal record. No recent 911 calls from this address. Next of kin listed as a daughter in Seattle. Want me to try calling her? Do it, Mitchell said. But I don't think we should wait. Something feels wrong. Captain Rodriguez studied Max, whose cloudy eyes looked up at him with an expression that seemed almost human in its pleading intensity. The old dog whimpered, then barked once more, sharp and insistent. That dog hasn't stopped trying to get our attention for 1 second, the captain said slowly. In my experience, when animals act like this, they're usually right. He made his decision. Morrison, we're going in. Park, get that dog on the phone. Mitchell, radio for EMS standby. Jake Morrison retrieved the Halligan bar from the truck, a heavy-duty forcing tool designed for exactly this kind of situation. As he approached the back door, Max suddenly sat, his barking finally ceasing. The old dog's tail wagged once, twice, as if he understood that his message had finally been received. Sorry about your door, Mrs. Chun, Morrison muttered, positioning the tool. With practiced efficiency, he forced a lock, with splintering as the door gave way. The moment it swung open, Max bolted inside, moving faster than Tom would have thought possible for a dog his age. Max, wait. Captain Rodriguez called out. But the dog was already disappearing around a corner, his nails clicking rapidly on the hardwood floor. The team entered cautiously, calling out as they went. Eleanor Chun, fire department, we're here to help. The kitchen was indeed undisturbed. Coffee maker unplugged on the counter. Dishes neatly stacked in the drainer. Everything in its place. Speaking of a woman who maintained order in her life, they moved to the living room. TV remote on the armrest, reading glasses on the side table, a half-finished crossword puzzle from yesterday's newspaper. Max's barking erupted again from somewhere deep in the house, down a hallway. The sound was different now. Not the desperate alarm of before, but something else. Relief mixed with urgency, triumph tinged with worry. The team rushed forward, following the sound. The hallway was dim, morning light barely penetrating through heavy curtains. 3 doors, a bathroom, a linen closet, and at the end, a bedroom. Max stood in the bedroom doorway, his whole body quivering, looking back at them as if to say, Finally, you're here. Captain Rodriguez reached the door first. He pushed it open slowly, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. The room was neat, furnished with simple, tasteful pieces that spoke of a life well lived. A quilt lay half pulled from the bed, and there, on the floor beside the nightstand, lay Eleanor Chun. We've got her, Rodriguez called out. Get EMS in here now. He dropped to his knees beside the elderly woman. She was conscious, barely, her eyes fluttering, lips moving without sound. She'd fallen, that much was clear. How long ago was impossible to say. She wore her nightgown, one hand stretched out toward the nightstand where her phone lay just inches beyond her reach. She must have been trying to call for help when she collapsed. Max immediately went to her side, gently licking her hand, whining softly. Eleanor's fingers twitched, managing the smallest movement toward her faithful companion. "Eleanor, I'm Captain Rodriguez with the fire department. Can you hear me? Help is here. You're going to be okay." He checked her pulse, weak but steady, and looked for obvious injuries. Possible hip fracture, signs of dehydration. Pupils responsive. "Ma'am, how long have you been down?" Eleanor's lips moved. The captain leaned closer. "Max," she whispered, barely audible. "Good boy." The old dog pressed closer, his head resting gently against her shoulder, and for the first time since the ordeal began, his body finally relaxed. He had done his job. He had saved her. Now he could rest. Behind them, paramedics rushed in with equipment, their professional efficiency filling the small bedroom. But Max didn't move from Eleanor's side, and no one had the heart to make him. The ambulance bay doors at St. Mary's Medical Center stood open, fluorescent lights spilling onto the rain-dampened pavement as the paramedics rushed Eleanor Chen's gurney inside. The morning had turned gray, clouds rolling in as if nature itself reflected the gravity of the situation. Behind the ambulance, Officer Mitchell's patrol car pulled into the parking lot, and from the back seat emerged an unlikely passenger, Max, the elderly golden retriever who had refused to be left behind. "I know this is irregular," Mitchell said to the ER nurse who met them at the entrance, "but this dog saved her life. He's been by her side through the whole ordeal. I think she needs him." Nurse Patricia Williams had worked emergency medicine for 15 years. She'd seen enough to know that healing wasn't always about protocol and procedures. Sometimes it was about something deeper, something that couldn't be measured in vital signs and lab results. She looked down at Max, whose clouded eyes gazed up at her with exhausted determination, and made a decision that would technically violate hospital policy. "Bring him to the family waiting area for now," she said quietly. "Let me talk to Dr. Reeves." Inside, the ER exploded into controlled chaos. Eleanor was whisked into examination room 3, where Dr. Marcus Reeves, a skilled emergency physician with gentle hands and a sharp mind, began his assessment. Dehydration, severe. Body temperature, dangerously low. Blood pressure, critically unstable. And yes, as Captain Rodriguez had suspected, a fractured hip. But there was more. Preliminary blood work suggested kidney stress, possible UTI, and a concerning reality that Eleanor had been lying on that cold floor for approximately 14 hours. 14 hours, Dr. Reeves muttered, shaking his head as he reviewed the findings. If that dog hadn't raised the alarm when he did... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood. Another few hours, maybe less, and they'd be having a very different conversation. In the waiting area, Max lay on the cool tile floor, his head resting on his paws. Officer Mitchell sat beside him, one hand gently stroking his gray muzzle. Tom Rodriguez had arrived, bringing a bowl of water and some dog treats he'd grabbed from Eleanor's house. The old dog drank gratefully, his tongue lapping weakly, but he refused the food. His eyes remained fixed on the double doors leading to the treatment area, waiting, watching, refusing to abandon his post even now. "You're one special dog, you know that?" Mitchell said softly. Max's tail thumped once against the floor, but his gaze never wavered from those doors. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood. Within an hour, a small group had gathered in the waiting room. Maria Rodriguez sat knitting nervously, the click of her needles a rhythmic counterpoint to the hospital's ambient sounds. Mr. Patterson, the elderly neighbor from across the street, read the same page of his newspaper 3 times without comprehending a word. The young couple, Beth and David Chun, no relation to Eleanor, but the shared surname had created a bond, brought coffee and tried to make themselves useful. "I should have checked on her yesterday," Mr. Patterson said suddenly, his voice cracking with guilt. "I saw her light on late, thought nothing of it. I should have known something was wrong." Tom reached over and squeezed the old man's shoulder. "Don't do that to yourself. None of us knew, but Max knew. Max made sure she wasn't alone." As if understanding his name, Max lifted his head and let out a soft whine. Mitchell checked her watch. 2 hours since they brought Eleanor in. It felt like days. The double doors finally swung open, and Nurse Williams emerged. Every person in the waiting room stood, but it was Max who moved first, struggling to his feet, his arthritic legs barely supporting him as he limped toward her. "She's stable," Williams said, and the collective exhale of relief was audible. "Dr. Reeves has her on 4 fluids, antibiotics, and pain management. The hip fracture will require surgery, but we need to get her stronger first. She's asking for someone." The nurse looked down at Max. "Actually, she's asking for her dog. Can he see her?" Mitchell asked, already knowing she was pushing boundaries. Williams glanced back toward the treatment area, then at Max, whose entire body trembled with anticipation. "Dr. Reeves is unconventional. Give me 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes stretched like hours. Max paced as much as his tired body would allow, whining softly, his anxiety palpable. Finally, Williams returned, a slight smile on her face. "Room 3, 5 minutes only." And she looked at Mitchell. This conversation never happened. "What conversation?" Mitchell replied with a knowing smile. She led Max slowly down the corridor, the old dog moving with renewed purpose despite his exhaustion. At the door to room 3, he paused, nose twitching as he caught Eleanor's scent. Then Williams pushed the door open, and Max saw her. Eleanor lay propped up slightly in a hospital bed, oxygen cannula in her nose. For lines running from both arms, monitors beeping steadily behind her. Her face was pale, drawn with pain and fatigue, but her eyes, those eyes lit up the moment she saw her faithful companion. "Max!" she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak. "My good boy." Max needed no further invitation. With William's help, he carefully placed his front paws on the edge of the bed, stretching his neck forward so Eleanor could reach him. Her trembling hand found his head, fingers tangling in his soft fur, and tears began rolling down her weathered cheeks. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You wouldn't give up. You brought them to me." Max whined softly, licking her hand with gentle devotion. In that moment, the medical equipment, the sterile hospital room, the pain and fear, all of it faded away. There was only the bond between a woman and her dog, a connection forged over 13 years of shared mornings, quiet evenings, and unwavering loyalty. Dr. Reeves stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. He should have been reviewing lab results, checking on other patients, maintaining the professional distance that medical school had taught him. Instead, he found himself blinking back unexpected emotion. "That dog barked for hours," Officer Mitchell said quietly beside him. "He could barely stand by the time we got there, but he wouldn't stop until we found her." "Dogs are remarkable creatures," Dr. Reeves replied. "We studied the human body for years, learned to treat every system, every condition. But loyalty like that, you can't teach it. You can't prescribe it. That right there," he nodded toward the bed, "that's the kind of medicine that actually heals." Eleanor's daughter, Jennifer, arrived from Seattle just after noon, having caught the first flight out. Williams brought her directly to room 3, where she found her mother sleeping peacefully, Max curled up on a blanket someone had placed on the floor beside the bed. The old dog hadn't moved in 2 hours, refusing every attempt to take him back to the waiting area. Jennifer knelt beside Max, tears streaming down her face as she stroked his head. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for loving her. Thank you for not giving up." Max's tail thumped softly against the floor, but his eyes remained on Eleanor, watching over her as he had to the long, dark hours before dawn, as he would continue to do for as long as she needed him. Outside, the rain had stopped, and afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light through the hospital window. In room 3, an elderly woman rested, healing. Beside her, an elderly dog kept watch, faithful to the end. 3 weeks had passed since that desperate October morning. The maples lining the street had shed their leaves, carpeting Maple Street in shades of gold and crimson. Inside St. Mary's Medical Center, Eleanor Chin sat in a wheelchair by her hospital room window, watching the world beyond with eyes that had seen too much of sterile walls and fluorescent lighting. Her hip surgery had gone well. Dr. Reeves had been cautiously optimistic. But recovery at her age was measured in small victories and patient endurance. Beside her wheelchair, as he had been every single day, lay Max. The hospital had long since stopped pretending to enforce their no animals policy. How could they, when nurses found themselves checking on the dog as often as they checked on Eleanor? When even the most hardened doctors paused to scratch behind his ears? Max had become something of a legend within these walls. The dog who would save his owner's life through sheer determination and love. But Max was fading. Everyone could see it. Mrs. Chun, Jennifer said gently, kneeling beside her mother's wheelchair. She'd extended her leave from work, moved temporarily into her mother's house to prepare for Eleanor's return. The physical therapist says you're doing remarkably well. Another week, maybe 2, and we can discuss discharge. Eleanor's hand, still bearing the faint bruises of 4 lines, reached down to stroke Max's head. The old dog's breathing had grown more labored in recent days. He barely ate, even when Jennifer brought his favorite treats. His eyes, already clouded with age, seemed to look beyond the present moment into some distant place only he could see. "He's tired," Eleanor said softly. "He's been holding on for me." Jennifer's throat tightened. She'd been thinking the same thing, but couldn't bring herself to voice it. "Mom, he's just old." The vet said his heart is failing. "We both know what that means." Eleanor's voice was steady, but tears glistened in her eyes. "He used everything he had left to save me. Now he's waiting to make sure I'm okay before he lets go." The truth of it hung in the air between them, heavy and inevitable. Dr. Reeves stopped by during his afternoon rounds, his usual clipboard replaced with 2 cups of coffee, one for Eleanor, one for Jennifer. It had become their ritual, these informal visits where he checked on his patient not just as a doctor, but as someone who genuinely cared. "I've been thinking," he said, settling into the visitor's chair. "What if we accelerated your discharge? Get you home sooner than planned?" Eleanor looked up, hope flickering across her face. "Is that possible?" "With conditions. You'd need round-the-clock care for the first week, which I understand your daughter can provide. We'd set up home health visits, physical therapy 3 times a week, and you'd need to follow the recovery protocol religiously." He paused, glancing down at Max. "But yes, I think we could get you home by the end of the week." "Why?" Jennifer asked, though she suspected she already knew. Dr. Reeves looked at Max, whose tail managed one weak thumb at the sound of voices. "Because that dog has been waiting to go home. And I think he deserves to spend his final days somewhere comfortable, somewhere familiar, surrounded by the life he fought so hard to preserve." Eleanor's hand covered her mouth, emotions overwhelming her composure. Jennifer reached over and squeezed her mother's shoulder, her own eyes brimming with tears. "Let's go home," Eleanor whispered. The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. The neighbors of Maple Street rallied with the kind of community spirit that had become rare in modern America. Tom Rodriguez installed grab bars in Eleanor's bathroom and a ramp over her front steps. Maria organized a meal train, ensuring Eleanor wouldn't have to cook for weeks. Mr. Patterson arranged for a medical supply company to deliver a hospital bed, which they set up in Eleanor's downstairs study. Climbing stairs was out of question for now. Beth and David, the young couple down the street, did something even more special. They cleared Eleanor's back garden, laying down soft blankets and pillows in a sunny corner where Max used to love lying on warm afternoons. If these would be his final days, they wanted him to have his favorite spot. Friday morning arrived with crisp autumn sunshine. Officer Mitchell, who had visited Eleanor several times during her hospital stay, volunteered to provide the escort home. As orderlies wheeled Eleanor toward the hospital exit, staff members lined the corridor, nurses, doctors, janitors, cafeteria workers, all there to say goodbye to the woman and dog who had touched their hearts. Max walked beside the wheelchair, Jennifer supporting him with a gentle hand under his chest. Each step was an effort, his breathing ragged, but his tail wagged steadily. He was going home. The patrol car's lights weren't flashing this time. No emergency, no crisis, just a quiet dignity as Mitchell led the small convoy down familiar streets. When they turned onto Maple Street, Eleanor gasped. The entire neighborhood had gathered. Handmade signs welcomed her home. Children waved, Adults applauded, and more than a few eyes glistened with tears. Tom and Maria stood on Eleanor's front porch. The door opened wide. A new welcome mat reading, "Home is where your dog is," placed carefully at the entrance. As Jennifer helped her mother from the car, supporting her careful steps toward the house, Max moved ahead, his pace slow but determined. He climbed the ramp Tom had built, one painful step at a time. He crossed the threshold into the home he protected, the home he had refused to abandon even when his body screamed with exhaustion. And there, in a familiar entryway that smelled of lavender and old books and 13 years of shared life, Max finally stopped. Eleanor settled into her recliner, the same chair where she'd spent countless evenings with Max at her feet. Jennifer brought him his favorite blanket, laying it beside the chair. The old dog circled once, twice, then collapsed onto it with a deep sigh that seemed to release weeks of held tension. "Welcome home, boy," Eleanor whispered, her hand finding his head. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples, the house settled into peaceful quiet. Jennifer prepared dinner while Eleanor rested, and Max slept deeply for the first time since that terrible night. Neighbors dropped off casseroles and flowers, staying only briefly, understanding that this was a sacred time. Over the next few days, Max rallied slightly. The familiar surroundings that come from home gave him a final burst of energy. He managed short trips to the garden, where he'd lie in the sunshine that Beth and David had prepared for him. Eleanor would sit nearby in a lawn chair, her healing hip propped carefully, and they'd spend hours in companionable silence. Officer Mitchell visited, bringing a commendation from the mayor recognizing Max's heroism. The local news ran a story, "Loyal Dog Saves Owner's Life," that went viral, touching hearts across the country. But Eleanor barely noticed the attention. Her world had narrowed to these precious moments with her faithful friend. On a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after coming home, Eleanor woke to find Max struggling. Jennifer called Dr. Reeves, who contacted a veterinarian friend. Dr. Sarah Kim arrived within the hour, her kind eyes and gentle hands making the unbearable slightly more bearable. "His heart is giving out," she said softly, kneeling beside Max. "He's not in pain right now, but he will be soon. We can help him find peace." Eleanor nodded, tears streaming freely down her face. She knew this moment was coming. She'd been preparing for it, even as her heart rebelled against the reality. They gathered in the living room, Eleanor in her chair, Jennifer beside her, Tom and Maria present because they'd become family through crisis. Dr. Kim explained the process, gentle and compassionate, giving them time. Eleanor lowered herself carefully to the floor, Jennifer supporting her, until she sat beside Max. She gathered his gray muzzle into her lap, stroking the soft fur she'd touched 1,000 times. "My good boy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My brave, loyal, perfect boy. You saved me, Max. You fought so hard. But it's okay now. I'm okay. You can rest." Max's cloudy eyes found hers, and in them, she saw everything. Every morning walk, every quiet evening, every moment of unconditional love that defined their 13 years together. His tail managed one final wag. "I love you," Eleanor said. "I will always love you. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being the best friend I could ever have hoped for." Dr. Kim administered the injection with practiced gentleness. Max's breathing slowed, became peaceful. His eyes remained on Eleanor's face, holding her gaze until the very last moment. And then, surrounded by love in the home he protected with everything he had, Max took his final breath. The room fell silent except for quiet weeping. Eleanor held him, rocking slightly, her tears falling onto his fur. Jennifer wrapped her arms around her mother, and Tom reached over to squeeze Eleanor's shoulder. They stayed that way for a long time, honoring the passing of a soul whose loyalty had proven stronger than death itself. Later, they buried Max in the back garden, in the sunny spot Beth and David had prepared. Tom carved a simple wooden marker. Max, faithful friend, brave heart hero. The entire neighborhood attended the small ceremony, and more than one person spoke about how Max's story had reminded them of what really mattered: loyalty, love, and the bonds that transcend words. That evening, Eleanor sat at her chair, the house achingly quiet. Jennifer brought her tea, and they sat together in the gathering darkness. He knew, Eleanor said finally. He knew I needed him, so he stayed. Even when his body was failing, even when every moment was hard, he stayed. That's love, Jennifer. Real love doesn't quit. It doesn't give up. It barks at doors until someone listens. Jennifer took her mother's hand, squeezing it gently. He taught a lot of people that lesson. The whole neighborhood, the hospital staff, everyone who heard his story. He reminded us all what loyalty looks like. Outside, the wind rustled through the autumn leaves. Inside, Eleanor closed her eyes, and for a moment, she could have sworn she felt Max's presence beside her chair, keeping watch one final time. In the weeks and months that followed, Eleanor healed, both her body and her heart. She worked with physical therapists, regained her mobility, and eventually returned to her morning walks, though they were shorter now and slower. The neighborhood watched over her with the same dedication Max had shown, checking in regularly, refusing to let her fade into isolation. She adopted another dog eventually, a young rescue named Hope, who brought energy and joy back into her life. But Max's collar remained on the mantel, and his photo held a place of honor above her chair. Some loves, she knew, weren't meant to be replaced. They were meant to be remembered, cherished, and honored. Officer Mitchell included Max's story in training seminars, teaching new officers to trust their instincts and pay attention when animals displayed unusual behavior. Dr. Reeves used the case to advocate for therapy animal programs in hospitals, arguing that healing wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and sometimes it came on four legs. The story of Max, the elderly dog who refused to give up, spread far beyond Maple Street. It became a reminder in a cynical world that loyalty still existed, that love still mattered, that sometimes the smallest, weakest voice could save a life. And on quiet evenings, when Eleanor sat in her chair with Hope at her feet, she'd look at Max's photo and whisper, "Thank you, my brave boy. Thank you for everything." The screen fades black and white text appears. In memory of all the faithful companions who stand guard over our lives, who love us unconditionally, and who remind us that the strongest bonds are built not on words, but on unwavering devotion. May we be worthy of their loyalty.